How are you? It's Dr. Muso. Today we want to talk about craft work. We want to talk about the people who survived during the Stone Age period, the people who survived during the Iron Age period, the people who survived during the time of Mapungubwe State, Great Zimbabwe, the Mutapa State, the Aroji State. What were the craft work that they did during that particular period of time? So today we are going to be guided by the craft that we are seeing here. Here now we are having a good example of a craft work. What is a craft work? Craft work, we are talking about trade. We are talking about skills. We are talking about occupation. We are talking about using hands in order to come up with something like this. The people who survived long ago during the Stone Age, during Iron Age, at Great Zimbabwe State, at the Roji State, they were also skilled. They were also what talented, and they were in a position of using their hands in order to come up with so many good items. So we are going to talk about examples of these craft work that were done by these people who survived long ago. Which were these craft work did they do? Let's start with number one, weaving. Weaving played an important part during the Great Zimbabwe State, during the time of the Roji State. These people, they were involved in the weaving. Not only weaving, but these people, they were also involved in wood carving. Wood carving was so important. And we are saying here now, these people now, they to use what are trees. And by so doing now, they were in a position of painting these trees, bring them together. So wood carving was so important also at Great Zimbabwe. During the Stone Age period, they were in a position of making seats in which they were in a position of cutting trees, shaping them, coming up with chairs, coming up with chairs, coming up with stools, tables that they to use during their times of survival. So wood carving was so important. Not only wood carving, knitting also. Knitting was also what important. They could knit now, come up with bags, come up with what are pieces, and they to use these bags, these pieces to store their food, to put stones so that they could hit our beds. So we see a knitting playing an important part during the time of the Mutapa, the time of the Aroji, and also during the time of the Mapungubwe state. Then also we have a pottery in which they had to make pots. They were making pots to store water. They were making pots to store their food. They were making pots to cook their food. So pottery again was a craft work. It was a craft that was done by the people who survived long ago. Not only that, but sculpturing. Sculpturing was also important. They to cut down trees. When you cut down a tree now, you are in a position of smoothening the tree. When you smoothen the tree now, you are in a position of having such a product. So what our sculpturing was so important. Not only cutting our down trees, but they could also sculpture what are stones and come up with anything that they could have wanted during that particular period of time. So sculpturing was so important. Blacksmithing, we are talking about the issue of coming up with iron tools, hoes, axes, spears. Having these tools now, it meant that they were supposed to be involved in a blacksmithing or iron smelting. They had to smelt iron ore. When they smelted iron ore, they were in a position of coming up with these iron tools that they had to use during that particular period of time. Hoes, they had to use them to practice agriculture. Axes, they had to use them to cut down trees. They had to use axes to defend themselves against against what are enemies. They could also use axes for hunting. So we see iron tools now playing an important part. So blacksmithing was also a craft work that was done during the time of Great Zimbabwe. Mutapa, the Roger estate, you also talk about jewelry making. Jewelry making, we are talking about making of beads. Remember, beads were so important. So jewelry making, again, it was another craft work that was done by the people who survived long ago. So what are we saying? We are saying we have got examples of craft work, like the craft work we are seeing here, an example of craft work that was done here. So the examples also of craft works that were done long ago included weaving, wood carving, knitting, pottery, sculpturing, blacksmithing, and also jewelry making. So that's what we have on a craft work. Thank you so much. It's Dr. Muso.